To our instructor, Dr. Geronimo A. Eliado, and to all our classmates, a pleasant day to all of you. I am Eroll Jude Aboganda. I will be presenting about the 5 phases of the clinical supervision. The first phase is the planning phase. The cycle always begins with a planning conference between a supervisor and a teacher, initiated by the latter in the same manner that a patient goes to a clinic to seek help from a doctor regarding a physiological problem. The purpose of the planning conference is to enable the supervisor and the teacher to identify the focus of observation in a collaborative way. In the same manner that in tandem, a patient and a doctor try to focus on certain information that will enable the latter to make an accurate diagnosis of the specific health problem of the former. During the planning conference, the teacher explains the lesson to be observed, its purpose and content, the way the teacher will handle the class, and the desired learning outcomes. We have here the second phase, which is the observation phase. Observation phase, the supervisor finalizes the choice of observation tool depending on the agreed upon focus. The observation takes place at the scheduled time. It is the task of the supervisor to record data and information as accurately as possible, especially of patterns and critical incidents during the class session. Two of the more popular instruments used for recording data are the Flanders system of interaction analysis and the Conan system of analyzing classroom management. The Flanders interaction model provides the teacher and the supervisor the opportunity to draw conclusions about the verbal classroom climate. And to make inferences regarding the effectiveness of the communication strategies employed in the classroom. The Conan system of analyzing classroom management identifies specific teaching techniques that help the techniques and not the teacher's personality are the most crucial elements in classroom control. In the data analysis, accepts feelings. Accepts and clarifies the feeling tone of the students in a non-threatening manner. Feelings may be positive or negative. Predicting and recalling feelings are included. Praises or encourages. Praises or encourages student action or behavior. Jokes that release tension and not made at the expense of another individual. Nodding head or saying aha or go on are included. In our data analysis, the first is accepts or uses ideas of student. Clarifying, building or developing ideas or suggestions by a student. As teacher brings more of his or her own ideas into play, shifts to category 5. Ask questions. Asking question about content or procedure with the intent that a student may answer. This is now under the teacher talk. Let's go to the direct influence. Under the direct influence, we have the first one, which is lectures. Giving facts or opinions about content or procedures, expressing his or her own ideas, asking rhetorical questions. Next is gives directions. Directions, commands, or orders with which a student is expected to comply. The third is criticizes or justifies authority. Statements intended to change a student behavior from non-acceptable to acceptable pattern. Bowling someone out, stating why the teacher is doing what he or she is doing. Extreme self-reference. Now, the last is student talk responses. Talk by students in response to teacher. Teacher initiates the contact or solicits student statement. We also have here the data analysis. Under the student talk is initiation. Talk which students initiate if calling on a student is only to indicate whom it talk next. Observer must decide whether a student wants to talk. If he or she does, use this category. Silence or confusion. Pauses, short periods of silence and periods of confusion in which communication cannot be understood by the observer. We have here the criterion together with the descriptions. The first one is group altering. So what do we mean by group altering? It is defined as teacher notifies students of a forthcoming change in activity, ensures that they finish the previous activity, and tells them what they are supposed to do next when they are all ready. Second is accountability. Teachers hold each student responsible for active involvement in lessons by requiring everyone to write an answer to the question before calling on a few to give their own answers, circulating and observing student work. Number 3 is smoothness. When I say smoothness, the teacher starts activities promptly, brings them to closure, and manages transition from one activity to another easily. Teacher does not introduce abrupt changes that disrupt students' flow of thought or work while doing an activity. The fourth is stimulus boundedness. When I say stimulus boundedness, the teacher becomes absorbed in a stimulus. For example, a piece of paper on the floor distracts or interrupts classroom activities. The teacher spends some time berating the class members for the litter on the floor or trying to find out how it got there. We have here the fifth one, which is overlappingness. When we say overlappingness, the teacher performs two operations simultaneously. Example, while the teacher is working with a reading group, a student comes to ask a question about grammar. The teacher keeps the reading group at work while helping the learner with the grammar problem. Number 6. Dangle. Dangle. Teacher calls for the end of one activity, initiates another one, and then returns to the previous activity. For example, a teacher asks the students to put their reading books away and do the spelling exercises. When the reading books are set aside and the students are ready to start the new activity, the teacher suddenly asks the students whether they understand the story they have read from the book. The seventh is witness. When we say witness, the teacher should know what is going on in all parts of the classroom at all times. When misbehavior occurs, teacher correctly identifies the main culprit. Teacher does not allow misbehavior to spread to other students before taking corrective action. It is scored for both timing and target accuracy. Timing involves stopping a deviant behavior before it spreads. Target accuracy involves identifying the erring student. Example: if whispering begins at the back of the room and then spreads, and it is only this point that the teacher criticizes one class member who simply joins in, this is scored negatively for both timing and target accuracy. We have here the raw data and develop a plan for the post-observation conference. Some of the questions to consider in analyzing the data are: number one, what patterns and critical incidents did the data indicate? Number two, what strengths and weaknesses did the teacher exhibit? Number three is what techniques were especially successful? Number four is what techniques did not work well? Number five is what patterns, events, and concerns needed to be addressed? The last one is how well the conference began and end. The supervisor does not make any conclusion but prepares the presentation of the data in such a way that the teacher is able to draw the conclusions by himself or herself. Feedback. Feedback is also important. The results of the analysis of the data are presented to the teacher during a post-observation conference. Based on the findings, the teacher is able to examine critically his or her own teaching with an open mind. The supervisor's task is to help build upon the teacher's understanding of the behaviors and events that occurred in the classroom as borne out of the data. We have here some questions needed to be considered. Number one, what patterns and critical incidents are revealed by the data? Number two is how do these events impact student learning? The third is were there outcomes that were unanticipated or unintended? The fourth is what changes are necessary to improve the teaching learning process in terms of motivation, presentation, questioning, and assessment techniques. Based on the findings of their study on the behavior of effective principals, Blassie and Blassie 2000 concluded that effective feedback is given when principals: number one, include explanatory comments that focus on a specific behavior observed in class. Number two, avoid non-judgmental and non-evaluative behavior. Number three, provide detailed and descriptive information of the behavior observed. Number four, include positive elements indicating strong points in the teacher performance. Number five, establish collegial relationships based on trust and respect. And the last is promote two-way interaction and problem-solving orientation. Moreover, Blassie and Blassie revealed another post-conference strategy that is useful if implemented properly, making appropriate suggestions. For instance, they found out that good principals made purposeful, appropriate, non-threatening suggestions. As a consequence, participating teachers responded positively to suggestions by: number one, implementing new ideas, then using a great variety of teaching methods, Third is responding to student diversity. Fourth is preparing and planning more carefully. Taking more risk. Number 6 is achieving better focus. Number 7 is using professional discretion in making changes. Likewise, the critical elements in making suggestions noted by the authors are as follows. Number 1. Principals listen before making suggestions. Number 2. Principals often made suggestions in such a way as to extend, broaden, or enrich teachers' thinking and strengths. 3. When making suggestions, principals shared, among other things, their own professional experiences to encourage teacher reflection. Number 4. Principals indirectly made suggestions for the improvement of teaching through examples and demonstration. 5. Principals gave teachers discretion or choice to accept or reject their suggestions, and this was considered critical to the success of making suggestions. 6. At times, principals even supported instructional changes that contradicted current policy. 7 is principals bolstered their suggestions by encouraging teachers to take risks to improve instruction. Number 8. Principals supplemented their giving of suggestions with distributing literature on effective instruction. 9. In most cases, principals gave suggestions during face-to-face interaction. The supervisor critically examines his or her behavior and performance during the supervision cycle. The questions to be considered are: number 1, how well did the clinical supervision cycle go? Number 2, what worked well and what did not? Number 3, what are the areas of improvement? How can the next cycle be improved? Number 4, what other strategies can be explored for better results during the clinical supervision cycle? So we are the group 3. Thank you for watching.